All right, and we are now recorded. So, just for everyone, tuning in as well as here in the call, we got a lot to cover today, which I'm pretty excited about. So, first of all, everyone, thank you so much for coming back to our Julia monthly meeting here in the month of June. So, happy Thursday to everyone. So, today's agenda, we have a lot of kind of just big things to cover. Like it's a small number of things, but they're each individually quite quite intensive to cover. So with that being said, let's just take some time to just walk through, just our kind of beginning for the day. Uh, so as always, I just want to open the floor in case if there's any new attendees that they want to introduce themselves. So I will pause for a moment. If anyone wants to speak up and introduce themselves, they are welcome to. Otherwise, we can go forth with the agenda. All right. We'll go ahead and get to the next ticket on the agenda. So, folks here joining in. So, unfortunately, this month, I usually always try my best to record who might be the new contributors within the Julia Health ecosystem. This month, I didn't actively see any particularly new contributors popping into the ecosystem. I'm not sure if anyone else ran into anyone. So I'll pause for a second if anyone wants to give shout outs to any new contributors within the Julia Health ecosystem. And if not, that's fine. I was just trying my best this month to look for other potential new contributors within Julia Health. Myself, I didn't personally see anyone. So if anyone else did, I'll let you speak up and comment. Otherwise, we can move to the next agenda topic. Okay. I think that is it for at least the beginning, introductions and recognition for new contributors. So we're going to go right ahead and get into announcements. And we actually have quite a lot of exciting things happening, and I'm very excited to share all about them with you all here today. So the first one is just a reminder for, mentors for Google Summer of Code. So give me just a second to pull up something. So right now with Google Summer of Code, many students are getting to the point where midterm evaluations will be taking place. So let me just pull up when those midterm evaluations are. So let me see here. Give me just a second. Evaluations, Google. And I will share my screen. Awesome. So this is the timeline again for various projects. So I don't think there's many small projects this year in terms of the 8-week project. I think most of the projects within Julia Health, if not all of them in Julia Health, are at least the 12-week 12-week time range. That might be even longer, depending. So just as a reminder, for 12-week projects, the midterm evaluation start date will be Monday, July 8th, and the end date for that will be July 12th. And bear in mind, these are, evaluation start dates both for the mentees as well as for the mentors. Same goes for, 14-week project all the way up to, I believe, the 22-week project. So just as a heads up, I can share this link in the chat with everyone. Just be keeping those, midterm evaluation dates on the back of in your mind as we're coming up into the month of July. And to comment a little bit about what these midterm evaluations are looking for, probably several of you have been reached out to either myself or my co-admin Avik Sengupta for Google Summer of Code. So I'm just gonna wear my Google Summer of Code co-admin hat for a moment for the Julia organization overall. And several of you probably have gotten reached out to yourselves by either myself or Avik. just doing a friendly kind of check-in recently about, how things are going with your projects, how's things going with your, fellowship period overall, and, if there's been any, concerns that any of you all have had. So from the mentor side of things, what we're looking for in this midterm evaluation period is more or less just, are your fellows, hitting the targets that need be? At this point, there'll be a question of should we continue passing or failing this particular student or not student, fellow, or, are there any concerns that you have maybe going into the second half of the fellowship period that you want to discuss with some of the administration about? From the mentee side of Google Summer of Code, we're looking for the mentees to talk about, are you all getting the support that you need for your projects? Are you, do you feel like you're being supported meaningfully by your mentor? Are there any other additional concerns or, problems you might be running into that, myself and Avik Sangupta as co-admins for Google Summer of Code for the Julia community, are there anything, that we can do to maybe help you? And again, if there's any questions coming up with midterms, please do not hesitate to reach out to myself or Avik. We're happy to, ameliorate any concerns that folks may have around what these midterm evaluations look like. So I'll pause here just for a quick second in case if anyone had any questions, and then we can move on to the next agenda topic. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone so much. I know there's some Google Summer of Code fellows here in the call right now today, so it's always a pleasure to have you all here. It's always super exciting. So I hope all projects are going super well. I hope all, both from the mentee as well as mentor side of things, I hope everything is going fantastic. So I just wanted to take a second just to make some reminders about Google Summer of Code. Next on the agenda is a quick discussion or review of JuliaCon 2024 coming up, which is coming up very, very soon, which is a very, very exciting time. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. So yes, we actually do have JuliaCon 2024 coming up this July 9th to the 13th over in the Netherlands. It is, I believe, our first ever JuliaCon happening over in Europe. Last year was in Boston, Massachusetts, here in the United States. But this next JuliaCon is going to be in Eindhoven, Netherlands. Through a series of events, I didn't think I was going about like a month or two ago. But since then, it's actually decided that I am going to JuliaCon this summer. So I will be over in the Netherlands. Not this Saturday, but next Saturday. So I'll be flying over to the Netherlands, and that'll be a great time. I'm excited to see as many people from either the Julia Health organization or the Julia community as possible. So I'm excited to both meet with folks there. I know in a little later in the agenda, we do have some JuliaCon topics to discuss, as I think Jay here had some thoughts you want to share about potentially like what could we do as a hackathon, or if there's anything that we could do like Julia Health related for JuliaCon, but we'll come back to that point in just a little bit. I did just want to highlight that this will be happening. As a result, I am not so certain just yet if there will be a Julia Health meeting in the month of July. The reason for that is, I will personally be coming off of JuliaCon as well as doing some other conference and meeting work over in Europe at that point, and I know I'll be on vacation. So I'm actually actively looking for someone who could potentially lead the July meeting as I'll be out. If that's something of interest to anyone here, I'd be happy to discuss with you how we could maybe make sure that we still have the July Julia Health meeting and be able to keep that going. Otherwise, just because JuliaCon is next month, the Julia Health meeting might be canceled. So if anyone is interested in helping me lead the Julia Health meeting for next month, please reach out to me either on Slack or over on Discourse or wherever I'm located, like on Slack, Discourse, Discord. That'd be great. So we'll come back to more discussion around JuliaCon in a little bit about Julia Health's involvement, but just wanted to take a second to recognize this. And so moving to the next agenda topic, this is kind of not something I haven't formally drafted yet, but for a kind of sneak peek of an exciting thing happening next month within the Julia Health organization, with a huge thank you to Dr. Jacob Matura, who I don't think is able to be here today. We're actually giving a small Julia Health workshop for the first time ever over in Warsaw, Poland. So this will be happening after JuliaCon over in the Netherlands. I'll be coming to Warsaw for, I forget how long now, maybe like 3 or 4 days. I'll be giving a workshop that will last for around like 2.5, 3 hours, focused on just some of the state-of-the-art tools that we have within Julia Health, how it works with composition to other parts of the Julia ecosystem, and just going over like how we can use Julia for various sorts of health informatics. So that talk will be given at the National Information Processing Institute over in Poland. So right now you'll see eventually some advertisements probably coming from myself and Jacob Matura just about this event taking place. And we're actively in the process right now of figuring out how to live stream the event, how to record it. So that way, if you're not able to come in person or you're not able to view it in real time, we'll at least be able to have recorded it. So that way we could share it on like the Julia Health YouTube playlists, so people can still be able to see what's up with the Julia Health organization and this current state of the art. So very excited about that. So if anyone will be in Poland or nearby Warsaw, please let me know, because it'd be great to maybe meet in person. So yeah, so I will take a second. Let me see. I'll take a second to pause here because I know there's a couple agenda topics that we've discussed so far. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I only have about 2 more announcements from the news side of things, and then we can dive into some of the more exciting big topic or big ticket topics here soon.
So I have one.
Oh yeah.
Is there any link to about this Warsaw meeting? Because I thought I saw something, but now I cannot find on Slack. But probably there is somewhere, or there is not yet.
Oh, for which meeting?
In Warsaw.
Oh, not yet. We haven't actually made it all public just yet. Other than we just haven't made any advertisements for it yet. So,
okay.
Because Jacob Matura right now, he's finalizing everything about like the live stream and everything. So once he's done with that, probably within the next few days, we'll be sharing some advertisements around it. So
okay, great.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, and I have one more question about JuliaCon workshop and actually when they will be on YouTube, because I understand they are live. They are not live, but they are recorded, and after the JuliaCon, it will be posted on YouTube.
Yeah,
They should come pretty quickly. They should come pretty quickly. Like, I mean, I don't think they published the date, but so what they did last year, I think, was they actually live streamed them while they're going on, and then within a few days they released a video. So you can, if you're available at the time, then you can do it. Otherwise, it's usually relatively quickly. It may not be the same day, but sometimes it's the next day, or sometimes it's like 3 days later or something. It just depends on who's doing it. But yeah, those are like long, and those are good. Like they're like 3 hours. I think those are the 3 hour. The first day is the tutorials, and so usually they're like 3 hours long.
Yeah, but I've seen few interesting, but it's too far to Norway.
Yeah.
Even though I live in Poland, but it's still.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, speaking of, I think Jacob. Yeah, I think Jacob just got here. Oh, great. Let's see. But okay. Let's see. Yeah. Jacob Matura, I just wanted to tell you, we were just actually talking about the upcoming events over in Poland. So
Oh,
it was
okay.
great timing that you joined in. We were just talking about that coming up soon, which is pretty exciting. So
Nice. Yes. See you soon.
yeah, see you soon. I'm excited. But yeah, we summoned you.
Yeah.
That's how that worked. We were talking about you. So
I suppose so.
yeah,
Okay. Sorry for being late a bit.
no worries, no worries. But okay, so moving on from kind of that discussion, there was really just, I'd say, one more kind of major announcement, and then we can move on to like some other more salient pieces in today's meeting, which is that myself and George Datsaris, we are working on a, a physiological digital signal processing paper. I don't know if you saw this discourse discussion released by George, I guess almost 3 weeks ago at this point. So what George and I have been doing is we've been working on just kind of a state-of-the-art overview of the Julia ecosystem and how Julia can be used for digital signal processing with applications to physiological applications, especially related to echocardiograms, electroencephalograms, various sorts of digital series, digital health time series data. And looking at the description here, we're planning to submit something to Frontiers, which is a fun fun sort of journal publication avenue, which I've interacted with in the past. So that call, I know for George, that is still open. So if anyone is interested in that, you're welcome to maybe reply to George and see if joining in might be interesting to working on this paper. I know we're getting close to having like a first draft or so done, probably by the end of this weekend. But I think George is still, interested to see if anyone else from the Julia community might want to tune in. But I just wanted to highlight this and also say a huge thank you to George Datsaris about bringing this to the broader Julia community. I think it's really cool to see, potential authors or journal article authors just publishing out in the Julia community. Hey, I have this idea for a paper. We're working on it. Who wants to work with me? And seeing that's actually working to get people joining in to tag team a paper really fast is pretty awesome. So just wanted to share that. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I will share this in the chat right now. So let me jump over here. And there we go. So that's the link if anyone is curious. But yeah, so that is it for announcements for today. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on, lots of exciting things happening. But now we can move into kind of the more interesting, salient topics for today's meeting. The three big ticket items I want to talk about and discuss today is there is work being done on setting up a blog for the JuliaHealth community. I want to talk about those next steps for research projects at Northeastern University, as well as some final thoughts on JuliaCon 2024 that I think Jay wanted to share a little bit about. So with that being said, we can dive right into our discussion around the JuliaHealth blog and how that is shaping up so far. So let me go ahead. I will share my screen here, and we will go from there. So yeah, so as many folks might know, we're kind of in the midst of doing a lot of, or attempting to do a lot of revitalization and also improvements of documentation around the JuliaHealth ecosystem. And one of those things is thinking around, like, we have the JuliaHealth website. If folks haven't seen it, here is, JuliaHealth.org, which is, pretty sparse. It just gives folks a really quick overview of what packages we have available, meeting notes, and just, where to find certain packages and how to get involved with us. But one of the things that I've been considering for a long time is the idea of having like community-driven blog posts from within the Julia Health ecosystem. I know right now there really hasn't been an avenue to really have sort of this Julia Health blog. Like, sure, there's been, different sites like Forum that have popped up. There's been, personal websites that have popped up. There's been many of these different, sort of approaches that people have been doing with trying to create, some centralization around like, how can we create, material that we can share across the Julia ecosystem? And for a variety of reasons, that has been, rather tricky, rather challenging. And so to more really focus on the needs of the Julia Health organization, as well as trying to improve just how we can better link together the various aspects of Julia Health together into, centralized places. I'm imagining right now, and this is still, in the works, and I'm actively looking for feedback. So I'll be pausing in this discussion here and there for feedback and thoughts from folks in the call today. But what I'm imagining right now is we still, obviously we'll keep like the Julia Health website, juliahealth.org, have that as, the main landing page where people can find meeting notes, where people can find, all sorts of things. But then we'll probably add like another, page or a button for the Julia Health blog. People can click the Julia Health, they can click that button for going to the blog. And it takes them to a site like this. So this is right now a prototype of the Julia Health blog. It is currently running on locally on my computer. It's not deployed anywhere yet or anything. But this is a prototype running actually based off of the Quarto literate documentation ecosystem. If folks haven't seen what Quarto is, Quarto is this really nice open source scientific and technical publishing system seen here. If folks are coming from like R, this is kind of the successor to R Markdown, as well as some other different sorts of literate programming, documentation notebooks from within the R ecosystem. As you can see, it supports Python, R, Julia, Observable. I think it also supports some other kernels and backends. It uses Pandoc to render everything together, and it comes out looking really, really slick. As you can see, you can go from a notebook directly to a blog post, and something that maybe folks have run into if you've tried writing blogs in the past using Julia. Let me go back over here. There we go. Something that maybe you've run into as a problem with writing blogs in the past using Julia is that, unlike maybe some other languages like Python or R in the past, it might be more easy to somehow regenerate the documentation that you might want for your blogs in those languages. Julia, I've personally always had the issue where if I wanted to, write a blog, give a tutorial, and submit that to my documentation or my website generation pipeline, it'd oftentimes be very tricky because you couldn't. For me personally, I couldn't really manage how to have multiple different project tomls per blog post. Whereas with this Quarto blog, this is actually a solved problem. Like, actually, you can have mostly one project toml per blog post, and yeah, you can just have these sort of blog posts that come out frozen and linked to directly the different package versions that you're using at that state and time. So I'll pause for a second right now, just before I dive into like showing like how the rest of the prototype blog looks like. But maybe first I'll pause here just to hear some initial feedback about, what's the idea of this? Like, what do you think about the idea of a Julia Health blog? Does the, stack, like the technology that we're using, make sense? Any questions or thoughts? So I'll pause for a second, and then we can dive into, I can show you kind of what a blog post might look like. So I'll pause right now. Or if there's any questions too, you're welcome to ask too about this.
I'm particularly interested, how do you set up a project.toml for each one? Or are you going to show it later?
Yeah, I can show it for sure. Yeah, I'll definitely show you, Carlos, in the next part here. So.
Is it just inside of the notebook? Like Pluto does that too, right? I mean, Pluto, you basically just put using statements in there, and then it automatically just imports them. I mean, it just creates its own little environment. Is it the same kind of thing?
No, so actually, we can just dive right into it. So I'll pull up. Give me just 1 second. I'm just gonna pull up the pull request for the blog right now. Or rather, my branch. Give me just a second, folks. I'm just pulling up stuff. Okay, give me just 1 second. I realize I have the changes still locally on my computer. This is me being me doing great stuff. Oh wait, no, it's on. Okay, hold on. There we go. We have it right here. Yeah. Okay. So let me show you just kind of how the general structure looks. I'll zoom in. Okay, there we go. So yeah, so this is right now the tentative outline of the repository. Really, the biggest places to look at are any of these QMD files. The Quarto YAML, that's just a configuration file for the entire website. But then you get into posts, and here's where you have some more additional information around the posts. Each post will go into its own subdirectory. So, for example, if I were to over here, I'll actually just show an example blog post right now that I'm working on, which is exploring anthracyclines and disease within an OMA CDM database. So here's like how this looks like right now. Obviously, I still need to clean it up a little bit as it has like all the output, all the stuff just floating around right now. But you can easily just see code, come up here, pull this out. You can even, if you go all the way to the top, see all the source code right within your browser to see like exactly this is the source code that's used to generate this actual blog post. So if you want to copy it, over to your own place to play around with, you could easily. But if you jump over here, so this is the complex characterization folder, is the same folder for that blog post I was just showing. So within here, you actually have, this is where you keep the project.toml, and this is where you keep the index.qmd. So this is like the blog post itself that you write up in Quarto Markdown, which is a flavor of Markdown, but it's very, I'd say, somewhat straightforward to use. It's very similar to Pandoc Markdown, but as you can see, there's this like output, these different keyword variables that you can put within the markdown cells to say like how you want them viewed. If you want, it's very similar to like things like Weave or really R Markdown if you're coming from those backgrounds. But then within each of these subdirectories is where you store the project.toml, and based on a configuration that you can set up, you have another folder called source, this setup.jl file, and all it will do is just basically set up and just run the blog every single time, like rerun the whatchamacallit, the Quarto Markdown, re-render it, and present the output results of this blog into its own file per the package versions you want. So unlike Pluto, where the package manager is embedded directly within Pluto itself, because I know that each notebook manages its own dependencies, this is kind of more like each directory manages its own dependencies. I'm still myself working through how all this works exactly. As you can see, I'm actually using a hard-coded path for my own local computer right now. So what I'm hoping to do is make that into a general path sometime in the near future. So I know that's like not maybe not as comprehensive an answer as Carlos, you and Krishna wanted, but I will say like I'm getting more of a sense of shortly how everything works and comes together.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's just kind of a question, like, because I'm trying to think about, like, if you say you have a few blog posts, and each time for each post it has to build the environment and then run the post. Like, aren't there timeouts on, like, for GitHub Actions for like how long it can run or something? Like, so I just worry about, like, I start running if I have a more than a few posts, and each time it's building the environment for every post, that just chunks up a lot of time.
No, I think that's a really good question, and that's actually something that Quarto accounted for. And also, I want to give a huge thank you to Professor Patrick Altmaier. He kind of spearheaded a lot of this within the Julia ecosystem. But what's great is there's actually this little folder here called Freeze, where all the posts, like, say if you didn't want to auto-generate everything, especially if they take some posts take a long time to rerun, you can actually just have all of your like cached results, all your your results that you're calculating from Julia frozen and stored into this folder. So if you say you have a blog post that takes particularly a long time to rerun, but you might want to update it, maybe like just check it once a month or once every 2 months or something like that. Rather than rerunning it every single time the blog gets updated, you can have your stuff be rendered one time, cached into this freeze folder, and then it'll just be reused over and over again when like other pages will rebuild or something like that. So it's just a nice, clever way of being able to get around that problem that you're talking about, Krishna.
Yep, sounds good.
But yeah, so I know we're coming up probably at 12:40. So I'll just wrap up the quick discussion here. But the hope is that as more folks just start coming up with different ideas within Julia Health, there could be other ways for people to work on and write different blogs. This hopefully could be an easy way to provide access to any like public community just to come in to check out what Julia Health is up to and doing. The hope here is that I would specifically want to highlight Carlos for a second and just say, like, we were talking about KomaMRI the other day with your work with documentation and integrating Pluto into your documentation, which I thought was really fantastic. The idea for the Julia Health blog that I can see is that this is more looking at, those sort of, tutorials or workflows that really aren't necessarily directly tied into perhaps that specific package. Maybe for my use cases, it'd be like some of my observational health tools or some of my IPUMS tools that I've been working on with Krishna. But it'd be like, more broad or more specific workflows that people might want to use my various tools for. For example, like, this was an excellent blog of just discussing, like, here's a specific application of using some of the observational health tools for exploring chemotherapy drugs and heart-related conditions, which is a very specific example that I might not put in my tutorials for these packages, but I would definitely want them in a blog. So it kind of like the Julia Health blog, I'm imagining, can kind of sit in the middle of those sort of those pieces of information that you still want to highlight, but maybe not be worried about you as a maintainer putting into your tutorials and documentation. So that is it for right now on the Julia Health blog. I've been working on it. I know Krishna's also been drafting some of his own ideas for a blog post. So I will I'll pause there. I know like that took a little bit longer, so I apologize, everyone. But I hope that was interesting. I'd love, if you have any thoughts or feedback, I can pause for just like maybe 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we can switch to the next topic. But I'd be curious to hear what folks are thinking about this idea. If it sounds good, if it doesn't, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
And
Basically,
where?
sounds good.
Oh, sorry. Where are you editing these QMD files? Just VS Code?
Yeah, VS Code, Vim, whatever you're comfortable with. It's
Okay.
nice because it doesn't, unlike, so it's coming from the company Posit, which used to be, in the past RStudio. Thankfully, they're not like, you must use RStudio or you must use, any of these tools to make the QMD files.
Don't make me use RStudio.
Yeah, you must use RStudio for the Julia code you're writing. I'm like, no.
Okay, amazing. It's looking good.
Probably basic question, but you show those snippet of codes, and it's as in normal Markdown, you can link some part of code, or is it just copy paste some stuff?
Yeah. So if I'm understanding your question. So it's like you can both have your code in the actual Markdown documents, but then you can also choose how you want it executed. You can have it chosen as just like displayed. You can have it chosen as evaluate and show the output, evaluate, hide the code, but show the output. I think what's also interesting is I believe if folks here use the doc test ecosystem within Documentor's workflow, I think you can also have multiple cells sharing the same same environments, so you can share variables between the cells. I'll need to double check everything there, Jan, but I hope that answers some of the question.
Okay, and as I understood correctly, this is more dynamic form of blog, so there can be some action from user to do their see some action of code, not only just pure code.
Yeah, so you could see the output.
No, I think that's about interactivity. Like, will there be JavaScript controls and stuff? Can you?
Oh, I mean, I guess I think the best I could say there is probably if your code emits JavaScript, like how WGL Makey or what I think another Makey, like Plotly Maki. I can't remember. There's one version of Maki where it emits JavaScript that you can embed into your files, and then you can still interact with it. So if your Julia code does emit JavaScript, I believe it should work. I've seen examples where it does. But if your code, say if you want some sort of way to put an input, put a value of 5 and then have Julia evaluate it, to my knowledge, that's still a no at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. Okay, so I wanted to go. Last time I don't know, I messaged you, Jacob, about the cutting edge research that is happening around the health and medicine. So I was wondering, since these research papers are already open access, is there a way to just simply link them onto the blog post under a relevant tab or relevant research tab where people can navigate to the links so that they can understand what Julia Health Community to be specific, is working on and what kind of research is being morphed into a package, basically.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great thought. Right now, that is something that's planned for the documentation overhaul that we're planning for the JuliaHealth website. We want to have a page where it's talking about latest research or things coming out from the different members of the JuliaHealth community. We want to be highlighting that work. So right now there isn't actively one div, but in the future I'm hoping that we will have a page for stuff like that. But I wouldn't imagine that information would be put on necessarily the blog post, unless if it's someone's writing a blog post to say oh, we published this paper and here's the code, to go along with it, or here's how to use the my package alongside this code or something like that, or showing a workflow.
That's awesome, because the reason I say that is because I see so many packages in Julia, and they all have issues open with the best reference material out there. So yeah, if organizing it would be way better.
Oh, I agree. No, I agree. So
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I think I cut someone off.
No, I always say the same thing. Like, where a lot of people's documentation, they don't include footnotes to the, what the source of, like some of those, like the, I don't know, estimators or the models or whatever. So yeah, you can always put references. And so, yeah, it'll be, if you want to put it into a blog post and explain all those things, that's always good too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Well, I want to take the last. So I'm gonna move from talk about the discussion here at the blog. I'm glad to hear. It sounds like lots of people think it seems like a good thought so far. We'll keep playing with it. I'm also imagining this is where, as fellows for Google Server of Code wrap up their projects. I mean, this is a couple months out, but I'm imagining this is a blog where the Google Summer of Code fellows can be submitting their final sort of blog posts and materials such that we can highlight it forever in the JuliaHealth community. So I will be continuing to work on that probably in the background. If anyone wants to work with me on this, I know Krishna, you've been working with me a little bit on this. If anyone else wants to join in to discuss like the future of this blog and how we can get it more up and running, I'd be happy to chat some more. And I hope it'd be a really nice asset for the broader JuliaHealth community, both to highlight what everyone's up to, as well as giving an opportunity for people to maybe come into the JuliaHealth community to see what we're doing. So. But with that said, I'm going to take kind of just a second here before we talk about our last bullet. It seems like we'll have to, Jay, we might have to postpone the discussion, or maybe have the discussion around JuliaCon in the group chat, in the Slack chat. So unfortunately, just for sake of time, but because I do want to take some time to talk around some of the project ideas that we're formulating for Northeastern University. But before we get to that, I did just want to take a second to actually highlight and recognize some work being done within the JuliaHealth community. I forgot to actually highlight this at the beginning of our call. So give me just 1 second, everyone, as I pull something up. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, so give me just a second, everyone. So let's see here. So I meant to do this at the beginning of our call, but I realized I forgot to. So my apologies, everyone. But I wanted to give a huge highlight and shout out to Carlos within his work over at KomaMRI and his team's work at KomaMRI. They just recently crossed the threshold of 100 stars on GitHub, which I know, a lot can be said about the utility or usefulness of, the stars on GitHub. But I think for, research software engineers and folks making these, I know you have, Carlos, making this kind of like your baby, if you will, in terms of how much time and involvement you've put into this work. I think this is absolutely fantastic. I wanted to take a second to, both highlight and celebrate just the fact that you crossed the threshold there. I also wanted to, I'll pause for a second. And Carlos, I don't know if you want to share any words about this. And maybe I'd love to, just open the floor to you for maybe a minute or so, just to share some thoughts and maybe where you're thinking about taking KomaMRI next or anything like that. So I'll pause for a second here, Carlos.
Yeah, well, thanks. I think it's a huge milestone for me because I didn't do any publicity of the software, just organically grew. And I think part of it is because people are really appreciating some qualities of or properties that Julia is giving to the community, like the reproducibility aspect, that it just works with GPUs, and just that in general, the packages that are coming from the ecosystem are just better built, like, for example, the code coverage, testing, etc. And so I think people just appreciate that the code is better built. And yeah, it is kind of like my baby, as you said. So it's good that it's growing well and healthy.
That's amazing.
And yeah, the next steps are to implement the multi-vendor GPU support. So currently, actually, it's already kind of working in dev. So if you go at the bottom, there's a table, and in build guide, yeah, that one. Yeah, all of those badges are generated automatically from build guide, and it's passing for multiple GPU brands like NVIDIA, AMD, Apple. And I think that's just because Julia makes it so easy to like use them all. And now we are planning to do like some kernel programming, and I know Julia really makes all of this really easy, and I'm really grateful for it, all of the efforts of the community.
That's incredible. Yeah, no, like, just immense work. Huge congratulations, Carlos. Like, definitely, like, deserve all the recognition and more. Yeah, so I just wanted to take, a second here just to highlight your work. And if anyone in the community hasn't checked out KomaMRI, be sure to check it out. I think it's one of the best packages I've seen in a long time, like within the Julia community. I love just all the work that you put into it, all the thoughts. So yeah, just like amazing work here, Carlos. And also, this is unfortunately within Julia Health. I don't have too much power to do like anything, Carlos. But I was gonna say this is a very silly thing, and I'll show you it. But yesterday, I know I was talking to you, Carlos, and I was saying like I was trying to come up with a way that maybe I could like do something fun, maybe do something interesting to highlight, or I don't know, just like give back in some way to KomaMRI and recognize all the work that you're doing. And this is very silly, but I noticed when I was looking at the KomaMRI README, I realized that like sure you do have the star counter, up top here in the top right, but I realized you didn't have a star counter on your README. So I figured out how to make a little Julia Health star counter if you want it for the future. I can send it to you if you want, but like, I just thought it'd be kind of fun. And, again, just wanted to highlight
sure,
all
it's nice.
yeah,
I'll
just
include
highlight
it.
all the work you're doing. And, okay, well, I can send it to you later, but that was like the most I could
Thanks.
do. I was like, I didn't know how to like build something more more involved than that. And weirdly enough, that logo took me like an hour or so to figure out, regrettably. So I can send it to you later, but I just wanted to say like a huge thank you, Carlos, just for being in the community. A huge congratulations, and yeah, I'm excited to see what's next. So, yeah. So with that being said, for the last 5 minutes here or so, unfortunately, we just had a lot to cover today. So with the last 5 minutes here, I did want to talk about some of the next steps for there is some incoming or upcoming opportunities at Northeastern University focused around projects that we want to be bringing into the Northeastern community campus for students. And for those of you who aren't aware of what I'm talking about, let me go ahead and share my screen here. So long story short, Northeastern University, I've been working with the mathematics department to bring and construct student projects for various classes at Northeastern University's mathematics department for student teams to work on. So over the past really month at this point, we've been collecting and reviewing different projects and different ideas here within this discourse post. I know I've discussed a lot with folks here over Slack and over Discourse. I hugely thank you all for all your contributions, especially like this wonderful post from Dr. Jacob Matura. We also had one from Dr. Oscar Laverny, who sadly I don't think was not able to be here. Laverny. But yeah, so I wanted to talk about what we are planning to do next here. So again, like I said, I didn't necessarily leave enough time to talk about everything involved here. But what we'll plan to do next is, I'll stop sharing my screen.
In the chat
Oh.
for that.
Does someone have someone's saying something?
Can you add that link in the chat of that post?
Yes, I can. Let me do that right now. Thank you, Jay. Let's see. There you go. So if anyone wants to look at what that post is, what it's talking about, what the different projects are available, that we're tentatively trying to make available for the the Northeastern community, those are the various projects. But in terms of the next steps here, I mentioned that my goal was by the end of this month to go ahead and open up a kind of final document that I can start sharing with my collaborators back at Northeastern University. So in terms of concrete next steps, I will go ahead right now and actually create just a little Google Drive document. I wanted to have more time during the call today to work on this, but unfortunately, we just kind of ran out of time, which is fine. We had a lot to cover. But this document I will share with folks who have come up with project ideas, who have discussed about how to best relate them to projects at Northeastern University's classes and class settings. And within this Google Drive documentation or Google Drive document, I'm going to go ahead and share this after the call today with my collaborator back at Northeastern University. His name is Professor Hei Wang. He is the Director of Graduate Studies for the Mathematics Master's Program. And he's the one that I've been talking to about getting this idea off the ground. So I'll go ahead and share this document over to him. What I would request that everyone who has added projects in that discourse post where we've had a discussion, I will share this Google Drive document with you. If you can copy and paste over your projects over to this document, that would be fantastic. And then what we'll do is, as I share this with Professor Hei Wang, him and I will review the projects again, see how they could fall into various projects here at Northeastern University's campus. And then my hope is that over the month of July, we will finalize most of these projects. And then by the time August comes, September comes, these projects are ready to go for a classroom setting. Because in August, I'll be also part of the Northeastern University mathematics department, I guess, welcoming program, I guess a little bit for the other graduate students. So I'll be sure to highlight some of these projects that will be coming up to the incoming students at Northeastern University's graduate studies in August. So I'll pause here for just a moment in case if anyone has any questions. I know we didn't leave too much time for this. I apologize about that. But yeah, I'll see if anyone has any questions or any thoughts that they want to share. All right. So what I'll do is, again, I'll be probably reaching out to folks I saw responding to that discussion over Discourse, asking for your email. And then from there, I will be sharing that Google Drive document. That'd be fantastic. And then, like I said, later today, I'll be sending that email to Professor Hei Wang to talk about what we can do for next steps to getting these projects into classrooms. I'm very excited to see what we can do. I think it'll be really exciting, and seeing how JuliaHealth can still get even more folks involved, and also how we can get more folks involved in doing all sorts of different sorts of health informatics. So I know that we are now at the top of the hour, 1 o'clock here in Boston. So with that being said, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone here in the call. Jay, we can kick off that discussion about the hackathon over in the health and medicine Slack. But I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who is able to come to today's meeting. Thank you so much for joining. And I will see you all potentially, hopefully, next month after JuliaCon, where we'll have a lot to discuss. So thank you everyone so much for joining, and I'll see you all at the next JuliaHealth meeting. Have a great day, everyone.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.